But what the Pew poll tells us, Tom, is that people are becoming more cognizant of the reality that money plays in politics in America, and more aware of the immorality and bad economic impact that the unfair distribution of wealth and income in this country is having. What Pew tells us is that people now understand that there's something wrong when when you have something like 400 wealthy individuals owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. I mean, that is just an extraordinary gap between the people on top and everybody else. And what the Pew poll also talks about is Wall Street, and an understanding that in many ways what Wall Street is doing is actually harming the economy rather than helping the economy.
And people have figured it out.
And people are catching on. And I think I would credit the Occupy Wall Street movement for going a long way in educating the American people about the role of Wall Street, about the growing inequality in America in terms of wealth and income, about the decline of the middle class, the increase in poverty. Before we can go forward, the American people have got to understand what's going on, and that is we are losing our middle class, and if we don't get our act together, this country is evolving into an oligarchy where a very few people on top have incredible wealth, incredible economic and political power, which takes us to another issue that we're going to be working very hard on, and where we need the help of people all over this country. What I see is one of the great political fights of our time, and that is getting corporate money out of politics. I think, Tom, many of our listeners know that 2 years ago, in an absolutely disastrous Supreme Court decision, a 5-4 decision, which in my view will go down in history as one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever, the Supreme Court came up with a brilliant conclusion that corporations are people. Corporations like ExxonMobil and Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, they're just ordinary folks like you and me, entitled to First Amendment constitutional rights, and that in the real world, the implication of that is that these guys can go into their corporate treasuries, take out tens and tens of millions of dollars, sit in a room with other corporations, and decide which candidates to support and oppose all over the country, and do this without disclosure. They can set up phony organizations so nobody knows who's funding these radio and television ads. To my mind, that is a very serious attack on the whole fabric of American democracy. You know, in a few weeks in Vermont, we have what we call March meeting. It's town meetings. And all over the state, people come together, and you may have 100 people coming out, and they talk about how much you spend on the school budget, how much you spend on the town budget. One person, one vote. What this is about, what Citizens United is about, is Karl Rove, the Koch brothers, sitting in rooms, quietly deciding who's going to get elected, who's not, spending huge amounts of money. So what we have introduced, and Ted Deutsch in the House introduced the same piece of legislation, is a constitutional amendment to basically say corporations are not people, that of course the Congress and state legislatures have a right to regulate campaign spending, and that corporations cannot spend money on campaigns. This is a huge, huge issue, because if we're going to tackle the economy, if we're going to create the kinds of millions of jobs that we desperately need, if we're going to deal with health care in a sensible way, universal health care, if we're going to cut military spending, if we're going to take on the very powerful special interests who today have so much weight over what goes on here in Washington and state legislatures, we're going to need to get a handle on that. And I would tell the listeners, urge the listeners, this is going to be a long fight. It's not going to, end tomorrow. We have a petition up on our website, sanders.senate.gov, and that petition is gaining a whole lot of names right now. But we have got to strategize and figure out how we educate, how we organize, how we win this victory, which, by the way, Tom, will have support not just from progressives. You got a lot of conservatives, you got a lot of independents out there who feel the same way. Corporations are not people. They should not be able to dominate the political process.
Right. And money is